So, hi, welcome to Diary of a Wayshower. Sorry, Diary of a Cosmic Wayshower. And I've got today Guy Anderson, the amazing Guy Anderson, with us. And I'm so pleased that you agreed to come and have a chat with me. So, I very much appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm in sunny Egypt, and I don't know, is it in rainy in the UK today, or is it sun shining?
Two interesting things you've raised there in one question. I don't live in the UK because it's a corporation.
Oh,
So I live on England or
yeah.
land that's referred to as England.
Okay.
But it's not raining today. They have obviously been chemtrailing every day, but we got the sun out. It's trying to break through the clouds. So here in Devon, it looks like we might have a day without having to walk my dog through puddles.
That's amazing. Good. I'm pleased to hear that. I used to have a holiday home in Devon in Exmouth. So there you go. So I know it well round there. Good, good. So thank you for joining me. And we just thought we'd have a chat about, I don't know, whatever comes up. I did want to ask a few questions. I know
Hmm.
you've written three books, and I've uh, read both of the first two. Not read the third one yet, which is conspiracy theories, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I just can't get hold of at the minute from where I am, which I will do when I get back. And I sort of saw you last year at the Shine seminars in Gloucester in August. You were doing a talk, which was very fascinating. I really enjoyed it. There was piles of people there coming up to the front trying to talk to you, and I was waiting around for a while, and then I thought I have to give up because there's so many that were talking to you. So when when did you first sort of have you got when did you know that something was up in the world? I mean, have you had that from being a child?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my dad. My dad, he was, and I wrote a little bit about my journey in my first book and how how
Yeah.
I started looking into conspiracy theories. And it was my dad. He used to read books that you just wouldn't find in places. I mean, Waterstones is a new brand essentially, but in that the equivalent, which back then perhaps would have been W.H. Smith's. He was reading books that were a lot harder to get hold of that were discussing Atlantis, Egypt. A classic example would be From Atlantis to the Sphinx. That's perhaps the most famous of all of the books that explore that subject. And then the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, which is where Dan Brown basically took his information to write his novels. So he introduced that to me in my teens, and he'd joined the Freemasons, and he used to share the odd snippet with me without disclosing too much. So he had a quest, I suppose, from his 30s. He was starting to look into occulted history and wanted to know who was running the show. And he was talking to me about UPARTs, the out of place artifacts.
Yeah.
20, 30 years ago, he was sharing things with me. And when the internet happened, that was it. Every time I went round his house, he would show me something else he'd found online somewhere. And he got me reading David Icke's work, which, for anybody that's awake is important because, he's responsible for so much.
Yeah.
And I see him as kind of like the godfather, really, of the at least the British conspiracy theory movement, if you like. And so I joined the Freemasons. I became an ordained church minister. So I've done things to find out more than you can by reading a book or watching a YouTube video. And then I discovered Tartaria in 2019 by the legendary Max Egan. I'm sure people watching this will know who Max is. Um, he introduced me to Tartaria, and that, for whatever reason, that became something that I couldn't let go. And every day I research that subject. Every single day I'm exploring it, talking about it, sharing something about it. and it just resonates with me because it is the biggest conspiracy of them all, and it connects everything together. So once you understand Tartaria, everything else makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. I get you. That need to manipulate history to change it to uh
Mm,
yeah, completely sort of disconnect us from our true origins and our tribal knowledge and wisdom and all of those things that we have been as the human race. But then they've
mm.
to disconnect us from our true origins. So then you don't know who you are. You don't know where you've come from.
Yeah, and that's that's where places like Ancestry.com come into play. With the fiction that they provide people with. But if you look at stories like the Great Flood or the Deluge, it's insignificant when you look at the number of people that were killed to wipe out Tartaria. That's 3.35 billion people were killed to remove that empire and all traces of it. So it's the biggest act of genocide that's ever occurred on this planet.
It's just it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? To
Mm,
even comprehend that. To
mm,
comprehend, we look at what happened or allegedly happened in Atlantis and even Lemuria before that. How there was wipeouts of
mm,
civilization, and then we got to Tartaria, Tartaria.
mm.
It's just, as I say, it's just, how to hide all of that and to cover it up and to take it off everything that they could, but they couldn't, could they? Because otherwise you wouldn't be finding the information that would enable us to realize what had happened. So they couldn't wipe out everything, evidently, and so
No, they did a bloody good job, but it's impossible to remove everything. I mean, obviously in Russia we had Red Terror, where they went around people's houses and removed any documents they had or blueprints, but they
no,
didn't get them all. And I'm lucky enough to have the memoirs of someone that died during Red Terror. And gave everything to his grandson, and this particular person, Mikhail, um, he had been given the information from his grandfather, who worked on the copper domes. That was his job. He worked with resonate, with resonant energy, and had blueprints. And it was his grandfather was arrested and executed, as were lots of people in Russia during that period. But they didn't get everything, and oddly enough, a lot of the information ended up in America. There was a small period of time, a small window where you could emigrate from Russia, and a lot of people went to Canada, and with them they took a lot of the information, and it's now starting to come out. People are buying it, people are finding it, and what was just sort of a load of Russian nonsense before, a lot of it in a language that people couldn't actually translate, it is now being linked to, could this possibly be Tartarian, the language, and could this possibly be evidence? And
yeah,
um, and it's now out there. So you know, fortunately, the Jesuits and the Freemasons didn't get everything. And you've got work like Anatoly Fomenko. I mean, the work he's done with Tartaria is fantastic, and probably the first person to really significantly write about what went on. We've got a lot to be thankful for having a brilliant mind like Anatoly Fomenko still with us today and still putting information out there. I mean, he's in his 90s.
wow, wow, and he's still here, hanging on, getting
Mm,
that message out there, which is amazing. No, no, that's really good. It does. It feels very resonant with me. When I started, reading your books, and I'd heard about it before that, but when I started tapping in for my own inner knowing, it felt so right and resonant that yes, there's something big missing here, big missing. You know, of course, trying to. It's hilarious, isn't it? How much hidden technology there is that has been around far longer than we can ever imagine. But now they try and produce it in the last like 50 years, 60 years. Oh, we've now got this or we've now got that. And actually, we had that bloody hundreds of years ago,
mm,
or longer. And,
mm.
same with the cloning, that's been around a long time, hasn't it?
250,000 years.
There you go. Yeah.
Mm,
We've had that technology for a long time,
mm.
and people still refuse to believe that it really happens or exists, but it does, you
Well, they're
know.
supposed that I think they're supposed to think that way. These are the NPCs. It's not a very nice expression. I don't particularly like using it, but it's the one we've got. And their role is to perform part of the infrastructure. And they go to work, they come home, they doom scroll, they go to bed, they eat processed food or takeaways. Then they go to work the next day, they come home, they doom scroll, they eat more processed food, they roll up their sleeve, they take a jab, they go
Yeah.
to vote, they actually think someone cares. Um, and they believe everything they see on the news, and that is unfortunately 80% of the world. So that they're not supposed to understand. They have no, I suppose Dolores Cannon said they're soulless, and I don't agree with that. I think actually what they lack is genetic memory.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
store an incredible amount of data in our DNA, and that's passed on from our parents, and their parents pass it on to them, and so on. But if your ancestry only goes back 200 years, you have no genetic memory of how things were before. So everything seems to be the way it is and always was. But if your genetic memory goes back much further than that, then in deep down inside, you've got these triggers saying, don't take that vaccine, or, you know, we shouldn't be doing that. Why are we eating this? And this geography teacher at school's telling me something that doesn't make sense. Maths is wrong. Starts off with the number one is wrong. You can't multiply something by another number and it not increase, but one multiplied by one remains one. Therefore, by definition, I haven't multiplied it at all. So if you can't get one right, what hope have we got for anything else?
Yeah.
And the history is wrong, the English language is wrong. And I think that that's why so many of us that are awake couldn't engage at school. We had school reports that said had the ability but lacks concentration, and because it didn't engage. And also, when you're fully awake, you don't allow anybody to stand in authority over you. So all of a sudden, somebody in a scary uniform with a blue flashing light on their car is of no significance to you. It's someone wearing a fancy dress costume that works for a private company that's decided that they have some sort of power over you. So you disconnect from authority too.
Yeah.
And as a direct result, you become, I suppose, what would be the equivalent in some extents to an anarchist, because the Windsor family, um, you no longer consider them to be anything other than cuckoos, and imposters, and anybody that's been knighted, or a lord of the realm or anything like that, is no longer someone that you would refer to as with that title. So, Keir Starmer, Jimmy Savile's friend, to me is certainly not Sir Keir Starmer. He's just a bloke called Keir Starmer, and the bloke in Buckingham Palace who lives there is a bloke called Charles Windsor, the brother of a paedophile, the best friend of a paedophile, and the nephew of a paedophile. The apple never falls far from the tree. So once you're fully awake, you sort of disconnect from everything, and it's really enlightening, to no longer have a television, and no longer read the newspapers, and no longer participate, and you just dip in and out of the system. You have to have a driving license and a passport, but ultimately you don't have to have a driving license, but it's easier to get on if you do, and we want to travel, so we follow some of the rules, but we play the system where it benefits us, but don't let the system control what we are and aren't doing. It's a nice place to be, to know that nobody has authority over you. It's a nice position to be in when you truly understand and accept that,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, sovereignty. Express.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and the fact that you can choose when you want to play and when you don't want to play the game, uh, only if it suits you.
Mm.
If it's something
Dip in
you,
and out.
yeah, you dip in and out just because you need it to whatever it, well, you need to just do something to get what you need to for your outcome or
Mm.
whatever. Absolutely. Oh yeah, it's great. Great. Nothing scares me anymore. Nothing and no one scares me anymore. That that's it. I'm not afraid of anybody or anything, and it's a great feeling because it gives you that freedom to be yourself,
Mm.
true self, isn't it? Uh,
Yes.
and to show your true, you know, who you truly are, uh,
Mm.
in all of your colours as such, which is
Yeah.
a
The
great,
three faces we have. Yeah, we all have these three faces, don't we? The one that we show a stranger, the one that we show our friends, and then the one we see when we look in the mirror, which of course, by definition, is a complete inversion. It's not actually us we're looking at, is it? It's it's a flipped image. Um, but who we are, of course, isn't what we're looking at all. It's just this is just a vessel, isn't it? Just a shell.
and
Mm.
it's not even how much of a percentage is who we truly are in here, because
Mm.
how vast are we as beings and souls, you
Well,
know?
I think we're all one person.
Do you?
So I believe that but as I said earlier on, I'm an ordained church minister, and it's an interesting journey because I think if you took anybody that spent a lot of time properly researching religion or is ordained, if you had a priest um, sat in a chair with strapped up to a lie detector, and you ask them some questions, the more you study religion, the more you realize what it's actually about. And and I think that that once you can kind of see through all of these things, everything immediately changes. And the message and the more I studied religion, the more I realized that what I should have been looking into was Gnosticism, knowledge. That's really they're the people that really knew what the Bible was truly about. Um, and the overriding message with it is that, as David Icke once said, he said that he was the son of God, and then everybody mocked him, but they didn't actually listen to what he was saying. We are all the son of God, whatever God is. The creator, the source, whatever you want to call it. There are thousands of different gods out there, and everybody thinks that theirs is the only true one, and all the others are nonsense. Like Ricky Gervais famously once said, "I just believe in one less than you do." Um, but I believe that we're all connected. So this source is within us all. We are it. It is us. And you know what I do to another person has a direct impact on me and other people, which then has this kind of like snowball effect and can change everything. Like going back in time and stepping on a beetle or an ant or something, and then something significant happens and you've changed the course of history just from one what you
Yeah.
have thought at the time was an insignificant act.
Yeah.
So I think that's the important part. We are all the same person. We are all experiencing the same things in kind of in different costumes, and we are all basically connected to the same thing. We're all plugged into the same circuit board, and one interruption with one person can damage the whole thing. So I think when people, if they can put aside their views on a religion, what football team they support, the sexuality of somebody. One thing that I absolutely find disgusting is that someone would judge someone else based on the colour of their skin. That sickens me to my stomach. If we can put aside things like that and realize that actually when one person is hurt, then we're all hurt. It's damaging us because they're targeting the public, the people. And if we unite, if we all stand together, put our differences aside and unite over the one thing, and that is that we are in this together, and the people running the show despise us. that's a common enemy that we share. And I think we could do so much if we put our attention into that rather than worrying about the other things. Um, but that's just my thoughts on it.
Very good thoughts on it, and I agree. We are all from the one source, whatever that is. Whatever we decide that is, it doesn't matter. We're all part of that energy,
Mm.
and we're all equally important, and we've all got equally important lives to lead. Uh,
Yeah.
what you do with that life that counts.
Mm.
And if you can, yeah, put aside your differences so that you can work together
Mm.
for a common goal of
Mm.
in sovereignty for all, then we're sort of heading hopefully in the right direction. And we're not
Yes.
running around like bloody ants going all in the or headless chickens running in different directions.
Yeah.
That's
Headless chickens is a good analogy.
headless chickens
Mm.
were actually, which I don't want to see a headless chicken, but but just the analogy of like if we could all just coordinate our anger and put it into action, coordinate it, put it into action, and then go and hit them hard, like we're
Yeah.
in the bowls, wherever it needs to be, then we would get somewhere. And I think, as I say, I do think that time's coming. So we will see. But
Mm.
as I
But
say,
it is very powerful, isn't it? The propaganda. I gave a talk in Birmingham on human cloning on Tuesday night, and I went outside afterwards to have a rollie, and this lady came up to me and said, "The problem with this country is that they want Sharia law, and we're going to become an Islamic state." Blah 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 blah. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. What's made you decide that?" "Well, it's all over the news." I said, "Okay. Have you spoke to any Muslims about this?" "I know loads of Muslims." I said, "Okay. Have you asked any of them if they want Britain to become an Islamic state and they want to impose Sharia law, nationally?" "No." I said, "So your information's coming from hatred, probably from TikTok, and you're supporting it by what you read or hear on the news." I said, "It's interesting because you've come to a conclusion without actually speaking to anybody that's part of the community whatsoever. And it's interesting how effective the news is, because it's done an incredible hit job, and it's using the oldest trick in the book. It's the Roman tactic of divide and conquer. If we can split people into groups that hate each other, then they'll destroy themselves, and we can sit back and watch and just keep stoking the fire. And and this lady is at a truth speaking event called Truth Juice in Birmingham, regularly attends, and I couldn't have found somebody that was less suited to be a regular visitor than her. And I found that fascinating because she'd fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. And she said, "Well, what would you know about it?" That was the last thing she said to me. I said, "I've been married to a Muslim for over 30 years. I think I know quite a bit about it." Well, what are her views on it? They're the same as mine. You're being used. You're being played. They've weaponized religion. It's used to divide us. They've got people worshipping, Satan without knowing it, and you've fallen for the lot. So my wife, if she was here right now, would resonate with what I'm saying and probably reinforce it. But thank you for confirming my fears that there are a lot of people out there claiming to be awake that are anything but.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even the fact that if you get the Muslims coming to live in the UK, they came for a reason, and also they've integrated into society that and they work very hard, and it's not them actually wanting that. It's just the rhetoric and the propaganda and the programming, isn't it? That getting
Mm.
getting other people to rise up against that. I think it's all to do, isn't it, with this illegal immigration stuff that's going
Well,
on.
yeah, that's an
Whatever's
absolute
behind that,
joke. Oh, don't
whatever.
you know what that's about? I can share with you if you want to know what, if you think people would be interested.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, they're not coming here illegally. That's the first thing. They're brought over here.
Yeah, of
And
course.
so
Yeah.
there is a company that actually repair the dinghies and
Yeah.
then ship them back to Calais so they can do another run.
Yeah.
These are coming over. They're then sent to hotels and they're being trained. So they're going to be the new army for New World Order. And the reason being is because they have no solidarity with the British public. So if they're going to enforce vaccine passports, digital ID, 15-minute cities, anything like that, they need people that are not connected to us
Yeah.
because the British armed forces and the British police are not going to go around and arrest their next door neighbour because they didn't follow a rule that they don't agree with themselves. So and that's why we are seeing military serving aged men arriving, and we're not seeing women, children, pensioners, and so on. So they're not here illegally at all. The government are bringing them here, and
Yeah.
they're being trained in training centres all across Britain at the moment.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You can see there's a very profound agenda behind it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. And that's but we've got to see it for what it really is, haven't we? Got to see it for what it really is. But
Yeah, they're being and you can understand it. They're being given the opportunity to leave their country to come over here, to be given a job, a purpose, and to earn a decent living, and they're taking it, especially if they happen to live in somewhere that we're currently destroying, um, or Lockheed Martin are, or the Rothschilds are, So you can totally understand they've been given an opportunity. People think that they're coming over here to take our jobs. The irony with it is that a lot of people are saying that don't work. Yeah, so what job is it they're taking? Um, so yeah, it is nonsense. But the good thing is people are protesting about it. They don't understand why they're here. They just see that they're in a four-star hotel and have decided they're working for Uber Eats, for cash in hand, which of course
yeah.
is nonsense. But they'll find the odd person there where they can say, well, look, he does. They're missing out the other 10,000 of them. Um, and so the fact that they're taking to the streets and protesting is good. They're doing it for the wrong reasons, but they're still taking to the streets. So it's a bit like the digital ID. People saw it as an invasion of privacy and wouldn't, there was no way they were going to comply to it. So they protested everywhere, all over the country. They
Yeah.
didn't see that this was actually leading to social credit scoring and is part of the World Economic Forum's agenda. They saw it as an invasion of privacy. So, in my mind, it doesn't matter why they take to the streets. The fact that they're doing it is good, even
Yeah.
if they don't really understand why they're doing it. And that's what I think we've got to the stage of now, where people have decided they will protest, they will kick back, even though they don't really know what's going on. And it supports our cause, without them knowing they are supporting us in doing so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at least they're willing to take some action, do something,
Mm,
hopefully training themselves to actually start speaking up more and more as more information, hopefully at some point that's real and true, and maybe they can research if they can be bothered, will find, and they'll find what the real reason behind it is or whatever else they're trying to roll out next. What's your take on the royal family right now? What's your prediction? Not prediction, but what do you think is going to happen?
um, well, I suppose it's difficult to talk about the parasites without talking about, Andrew. Obviously, he's a patsy. I think most
Yeah,
people that have looked into it know that. He's an easy person to target. They're all paedophiles, obviously, and no different to Elizabeth and Philip. They're all paedophiles. Um, so targeting Andrew is easy because he didn't really serve much of a purpose. I actually worked with someone years ago that served with him in the Navy, and he was known as being utterly useless then, and not even capable of making a cup of tea without getting it wrong. He was, terrible, despicable person. but the British wanted someone to be held responsible. Now, ultimately, they should be looking at Trump, and they should have been looking at Elizabeth and Philip, who introduced Andrew, but they won't. The public are seeing the royal that they dislike the most taking the blame, and these people probably still think that Elizabeth did so much for our country, which of course she did. She personally made sure that a lot of children suffered, and were sexually abused. So she did a fantastic job of that, and then did it in Canada and other parts of the world as well. So I think that they are um, absolutely vile, um, but you know they can't target Charles. We all know Charles is obviously a paedophile. His brother is his best friend. Two of his best friends were, and his father was, his mother was, and obviously Mountbatten was. The IRA got rid of him because of what he did in Ireland. So you can't target him. So I think what they'll do, they're pretending at the moment that he's got cancer, and that's been going on for a little while. Of course, he hasn't. Um, so I think what they'll do is they'll probably retire him early, and they'll put William Rothschild in his place. Um, and then the public will get behind the royal family again, saying we've got fresh young blood. He's more like us, which of course he isn't. He's a paedophile as well. So you've got this kind of like um, fake narrative, really, where we it's a bit like the voting system. One moment we are voting for blue, and then we change our minds and we vote for red. Um, but ultimately they're run by the same thing. The same sort of machine is running all of that. So all we're doing really is we're replacing one person that, I mean, what has he done for the country that you would say is a good thing, Charles? I can't think of anything. There'll be people out there that say he has, but you know, you replace him with somebody else that seems a bit more like one of us. Or he's got his mother's qualities, and I don't believe any of that. I think that they are all in it up to their eyeballs. And from what I've seen of William, he's not a very nice person. I think Kate's been replaced. But there is part of me that thinks that all of this is being driven to actually end the monarchy. They don't serve a purpose anymore. People have disengaged and lost interest, but people did used to say that they bring a lot of tourism into the country. But about 10 years ago, that was overtaken by Bicester Village, a retail shopping centre in Oxfordshire. More people now come into England to visit Bicester Village than they do Buckingham Palace. So I think those times have gone. Um, but is this all part of the plan? If we can get rid of monarchy, if we can remove if we can remove religion, if we can get it to a point where religion no longer is practical because they're all killing each other and fighting all the time and burning each other's religious buildings down and stabbing each other and so on. If we can get rid of that and we can get rid of royalty, then that drives us a little bit closer to having presidents and one world leader, which I think is going to be Trump. Um, and I think that may be part of this. They're going to get rid of absolutely everything. And then we end up with this world leader, that someone who actually sits at the head table of what we see, still a puppet, but somebody who is now a figurehead and takes the blame for everything and enjoys it. And that's Trump. Of course, far higher up the chain than Trump, you've got Tony Blair. He's far higher up the chain, in control. So yeah, so that's a very long-winded answer, wasn't it? So I think that they're just going to replace. I think they'll replace Charles. They'll put him out to pasture a little bit sooner than planned. They'll blame it on his health. They'll put William in, fresh blood, he's younger, and blah blah blah. But in my mind, I cannot see how you can grow up in a family that has so many connections to people that have abused children without you participating. And I think that even if you haven't participated, the fact that you are associated with these people and have done absolutely nothing about it, that shows that you are complicit. It's a little bit like if I was going to give you a lift to rob a bank. I haven't robbed it, but I participated in it. I didn't stop you from doing it. I didn't alert the authorities you were doing it. I actually assisted you by not doing so. So I think that whether or not we have Charles on the throne or we have William on the throne, it makes no difference. These people are rotten to the core,
Absolutely.
absolutely rotten to the core.
Yeah, they are rotten to the core. I mean, it's my story, but I've got personal experience of being abused by the royal family. So
What?
yeah, I have. So that's my background. Sorry, we did talk about that. Yeah, I have. Yeah. So I've personal experience. So I know that they know what they're doing. I know they know what they're doing.
So what
But
I just said, do
yeah,
you think that is
yeah,
that resonating with you?
yeah, absolutely. They all were in it. All were in it. I feel Diana wasn't.
I
She like
agree.
pulled into it, and then I think it was the shock horror of getting in there and then actually finding out what was happening. That's how my take on my experiences as I was a child, because I do know she was in the background, but it was almost like I felt that she was forced to see certain things she didn't want to see, and was then like a ticking, like she was on limited time, you know
Yeah, I agree.
they were just keeping an eye on her and waiting for her to kick off, which she
Mm.
did, and then they got rid of her in Paris, of course. So I do think that, but yeah, I've got experience of that. So I know that they are complicit, all of them. I can't see how you would not know what was going on in that palace. All
Mm.
Balmoral's a big one. There was a lot of stuff
Bal.
in Balmoral. Yeah. Balmoral's one of the biggest hunting grounds for children, and where they do a lot of stuff in Balmoral that they wouldn't get away with in Buckingham Palace or Windsor. So I know that. So yeah,
So there are things going on in Balmoral that we're not privy to that are involving children.
oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Uh,
confirms my suspicions because I don't think the name Balmoral, the morals of Baal, are, I think that that's a very unusual name.
it's a very evil place. Oh.
So what goes on there without sort of going into graphics? What?
Well, like they, not trying to sort of trigger people in any way, because I'm healed from this. So I help other survivors of this. That's part of my work on this planet. Is that they sort of will, they'll hunt children. They will hang them up like stags in the, like the stags hanging up in the, and
Yeah.
beat them. And that happened to me. I've got specific memories of that. So I've got damage in my wrists and all up my arms. I've got carpal tunnel syndrome and all sorts from being strung up um, like a stag. Yeah,
This was at Balmoral.
yeah.
So what were you doing there? How did you end up at
Uh,
Balmoral?
well, I was just targeted from a check because I was born into a. I don't want to swap the interview to suddenly you're interviewing me, but I was born into a family that was very heavily involved in uh, mind control, Freemasonry, satanic ritual things, and all sorts. And my family worked for the parasites, shall we say. So they were programmed to obey and do all of that. And I think I deliberately chose to come into that to blast it wide open. Um, so that's just the background, really. And I was got from a very early age, about 4.5. They started with me, and there was lots of things that went on. And I was taken to Canada for programming. I was taken to Canada. I was taken to the United States a lot. So I went to the White House and all of those places. And I was taken to the royal family a lot. And I always tried to work out how they could do that. How could they do that without my mother not knowing? How could I not be at school for 6 weeks at a time or 8 weeks at a time? It just doesn't add up. And I kept saying to myself, this is not true. Because how can I have been missing? And then I realized they probably cloned me. And then I had that confirmed. They cloned me as a child and would place the clone in the school, like with my mum. And so I was just like the good child going to school, but it wasn't me. I was stuck in bloody Balmoral, or I was stuck in Canada being messed around with, or United States or whatever. We had a military establishment bases right by where I lived, and I was flown out quite often. I was either
How
flown
old
out
were
or I
you?
was shipped out.
How old were you at the time?
It was going on from 6 years old right up to 14, 15.
Oh,
Apparently, at
wow.
15, I ran out of juice. I was not effective. And they stopped using me in that way. They just couldn't use me in that way anymore at about 14, 15 years old. And then I sort of, those memories were just completely locked away. They were, I was in dissociation completely. And it took a long time for me to open the door, like it was time for me to, come on, you've got to see these memories. You've got to see these things,
You
you know.
must have witnessed some horrific
Mm.
events, and obviously, I'm guessing that you were one of a number of children that this was being.
Oh, yeah. And I've actually met someone who I've been working with who was actually with me
Oh,
was actually one of the children being abused at the same time. And we recognize each other from being children. So that's so many sort of taken and targeted and used. Thank God. I mean, really, I'm still alive to see to tell the stories. There's many other children that didn't make it that way. They were just murdered
yeah.
and killed and
And this is
and
by the monarchy.
yeah, absolutely. And United States presidents
Yeah.
and senators and prime ministers, including French, UK was involved, all of that. So I've got all of that. And I was targeted for a long time. I was targeted for a long time, seriously targeted.
Because
Like,
this,
you speak, you've had it.
because I'm sure you heard about this, but there was the Philip and Elizabeth went to Canada
Yeah.
to a children's home, an orphanage, and took these children out for the day. So I think there were 10 of them, if my memory serves me correctly, and they never came back.
No.
You
I,
know,
I read about that. I read about that. Yeah.
so what do you believe is the reason for them uh, having a sexual interest in children? Is it
I
the
think
energy, the fear, or
I think it's number one, they have been brought up to do that. So it's part of their training and their programming. So that's one thing. So they don't know any better and they have been programmed to do it because it was done to them. And so that sort of cycle of abuse running down, especially down the parasite lines, right? Because that's how they treat their children, don't they? And that's how they stay in the programming of what they do in the power of how they hold on to power. So they're doing that. Number two, sometimes they pick children that, if you believe in esoteric, black magic, arts, energy, frequency, vibration, then there are certain particular children that are holding immense light, purity,
the
innocence.
innocence? Mm.
Yeah. And that light they can see, and they actually savor it. It's like the best recipe on the menu. It's the best meal on the menu, and they'll go for the best meal. So they'll be able to tell a children's light quotient, yeah, I say, and be able to then pick them off. like I'll have that one, you know. So
So do you
that's
think?
no,
Sorry, I was just
no.
going to say, do you where? So do you believe, like you said, that all of the royals are at this? So William, Charles, the whole gang. Do you think that Harry is part of it, or do you think he was part of it and stepped away? Where do you think Harry sits in this?
Yeah, I do think that he's been handled by Meghan. I think she's his handler. I think he was probably trying to break away. I feel he was trying to break away, and she was sent in to almost just like manage him and handle him. So he thinks he's escaping. He thinks he's getting away, but I think she's keeping an eye on what he says and what he's doing. Probably that's what I feel because his mental health is pretty, pretty rough, I think. And I do think that he probably is more awake than the rest of the royal family. I don't believe he's Charles' son either. I don't believe he's Charles' son. So that might make him more liable to be able to break away from the programming
Hmm.
that is running that in that family. And I think she's just handling and managing him, which happened to me. So, and that's how they manage it, you know.
Hmm.
And she'll have trigger words and all sorts of stuff that she can keep him under control. And I bet all of them are programmed. I bet all of them have been under monarch programming or MK Ultra
Hmm.
on some level. Not saying maybe the whole whack that others do, like I went through, but I would have thought they would have gone through some level of programming to keep
Hmm.
them in their boxes and cages, so they perform
Hmm.
like William, he performs, but I would have thought he would have gone through significant child trauma to keep him uh, as a good boy, because he's probably in fragmentation, we call it. All children that have been through extreme trauma of MK Ultra, SRA, have all got fragmentation, and then that fragmentation is controlled. Core
Hmm.
self is as like the normal one who's smiling and shaking hands and doing the job and going out and meeting people and running the charity and whatever. But then the fragmented aspects of him coming out at certain points where the horrible things happen. So it might be that part of him doesn't even realize he's doing it, if you know what I mean,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
what happened to me. So my core self not actually having any idea that my fragmented parts, I had five fragmented parts were off doing other things, and I was doing a lot of remote viewing for them, and I didn't even know I was doing it, so the shock horror when you find out what, like, your brain can't comprehend it, but I think that's what's operating with them. They're in fragmentation, and the sort of little core self they've got is acting, doing all the things. That's why they can look so convincing, and they can look so like they're being authentic when they're doing a speech or they're doing this or they're doing that, because that core self bit believes that they're really doing a wonderful job, whereas
Yeah.
actually the fragmented parts of them are going off and abusing children behind the scenes or
Hmm.
whatever. That's how I relate it to my own experience, really, is I presume that's what's happening. But then, of course, they're in a completely an environment where they can't escape. They can't,
Yes.
not just run off like I could like cut off my family. Da, 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 da. They How are they going to run away? Even Harry,
Yeah.
how's he going to get away from that?
Hmm.
You can't at that level of um, surveillance, and um, everybody around the world recognizes you. How do you disappear?
Yeah.
So I think they're in a very, like, how do they escape that, even if they wanted to? And that I do think Kate was killed, murdered,
Yes, I agree.
or the fact that maybe she was, as I say, she came in as an outsider like Diana, and maybe
Hmm.
was sussing things out, like
Hmm.
something's not right here, or I've got, and then they got rid of her.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. That's when she disappeared to Spain having treatment for cancer and nobody visited her. And then we saw all of a sudden people started questioning where is she? And then we saw that photograph that people said had been photoshopped. And then she actually came out and said she'd been having a go photoshopping her own photos. It's just nonsense, isn't it? But I
Awesome.
agree. I think they get to a point where they're no longer needed. And I don't know if they actually kill them or if they are put out to pasture somewhere and silenced and replaced.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people say Diana's still wandering around. There are some people that say she's now somebody else. I don't believe any
I,
of
I,
that. No, I don't either. But it's interesting. I put a post up a little while ago about William and Beckham together presenting they were receiving or presenting a helicopter on behalf of the London Freemasons, this bright red helicopter, and in between them is the set square and compass, very like perfectly positioned. David Beckham looks like Burt Reynolds, a young Burt Reynolds. And I think William, his appearance has changed.
yeah.
He seems very different to the young boy that we saw. Even the shape of his skull seems to have changed. And I look at Beckham and I think, well, now we've got him knighted. He's now talking at the World Economic Forum at Davos. This isn't the David Beckham that I remember, the one that people used to laugh at because he was known as not being the sharpest tool in the box, and now he's on the world stage. And I think, do they get to a point where people lose interest? We're not interested in hearing politicians or tech billionaires talking anymore. Most people hate Bill Gates for good reason. Most people now, if they weren't fans of Elon Musk before, now the Epstein files have been leaked, I'd imagine most people are no longer fans of Elon Musk, again for good reason. So you've got these people that have become through, if we follow the narrative, through success and ambition, have become dominant players in the world. And we are supposed to listen to them talking at the World Economic Forum and engage, either because we agree with what they're saying or we don't. And people have switched off. We don't want to hear Starmer talk. We don't want to hear Trump talk unless we want to, have a laugh for a moment. And we don't want to hear Bill Gates stand up and tell people how important vaccinations are. So they get other people now, don't they? I mean, Angelina Jolie, she's in the Trilateral Commission. Beckham's now talking at the World Economic Forum. And they're now sort of, I think it's a last ditch attempt at getting us to engage with their nonsense. Um, and when perhaps they've got a figure like David Beckham in a position where, okay, we're going to knight you, but in
Yeah.
return, you are going to do these things. Um, and if he's not very good at them, then they get the clone to do it, and David's sent off to pasture or replaced.
And as soon as you're contracted, so as soon as you've contracted with them in some way and given your permission, then you're in that energetic soul contract with them. Therefore, they can do what the hell they want with you.
Mm,
And if you won't agree or play ball with what they want you to do, they'll just kill you.
mm,
Take all your DNA, store it up, and then start producing the clones. They just,
yeah.
and they keep the clone going for as long as they need to keep it going. For years, they'll keep
Mm,
it going. But there's subtle differences as well with images. Most people can tell, but there's an energy about the clone. But you've got to sort of have that. It's really like I've had experience of this. So like if you love someone and you're with someone a long time and then suddenly they're cloned, right? It's quite interesting that it takes you a while to work out that they're not the real one. Do you know what I mean? So I would think for the people on the world stage that have their partners swapped out as clones, and then suddenly the clone's in its place, it will take them a while to work out because they'll come out with they'll sound like the clone exactly. Their voice will be absolutely spot on. The memories will be intact, in fact, too good at times. That most people have got a bad memory, aren't they? Like blokes. Like if you ask them what happened 10 years ago, do you remember when we went on holiday at da 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 da? And they go, sort of, but I can't remember what year it was. And wasn't that 5 years ago? No, it was 10 years ago. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Whereas, like, they give themselves away, clones, because they'll, if you want to test them, you ask them a specific question. And if you do it in the right way, they will give you the answer. It's so accurate that you know it's not like, that's not right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was August 1999. We went then.
Mm,
Like, you wouldn't know that. You would
mm.
know that. It's things like that, you know. So there's differences with clones as well. Like that, you know, and they're one dimensional. So they, you know, like an adult human being that you've known a long time, you know, that there's many layers to them, and the little tweaks and their personality and the way they say things and the depth of them, the energy that comes off them. And a clone is sort of like cardboard. So they'll sound like them, talk like them, but they'll come out with maybe things that your normal one wouldn't have said, because it's working from sort of AI, I presume. You know, it's an
Yeah.
AI you put in the back of their head quite often. So it's AI computing and working out what they would have said, you know? So it's interesting. That bit's in, and that's what interests me is sort of how people work out whether someone's a clone or not. It took me 2 years to work out that someone I knew was a clone, you know?
I've seen several examples, and I included these in Rise of the Clones of people that I've seen on TV, normally in interviews, that you can see that there is something not quite right. And probably the most famous would be Dave, who was interviewed by Larry King
Yeah.
following the funeral of Michael Jackson. And he claimed to have been his lifelong friend ever since he visited him in hospital when he was a burns victim as a child. He sounded just like Michael. He acted like Michael. He dressed like Michael. And he took complete, this person who had never been, allegedly never been on TV before, took complete control of an interview with one of the most famous hosts on the planet and was dominating it, complete control. Um, and then started defending Michael against the allegations that I think most people now know weren't true. He was trying to save the bloody children and protect them. Um, and you know, it was that I think that was the first time I'd seen, and this was, you know, a long time ago, I'd seen someone where I thought, hold on a moment, that's Michael Jackson. That is what you would have looked like after the burns that he received during the Pepsi commercial. That is exactly what we would expect to see. So, who was Michael Jackson? And then we come into the nose, the issue with the nose. And apparently, when they cloned Michael Jackson after the Pepsi commercial, his nose had come off and he had burnt. So they're reproducing something that isn't complete. So there was a lot of work involved, and the issue was that they couldn't get the nose right because it had burnt away completely. So you can't have a like for like because it wouldn't have a nose, and that's why they had all of these issues with him. But that's an interesting one. And then I saw Kevin Hart. No, sorry, beg your pardon. It was Martin Lawrence with Will Smith being interviewed after one of the Bad Boys movies. I think it was the last one they did. And you could see clearly that Martin Lawrence didn't have a clue what was going on. It was like this one was freshly made, you know, had not been uploaded, didn't really know what the day of the week was. And Will Smith, and people might be able to find this if they type in on, say, YouTube or BitChute, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Bad Boys, fail or clone or something like that. They'll find it. And Martin Lawrence just was totally incapable of speaking. And he keeps looking at Will Smith, and Will Smith's answering all the questions for him. And Martin Lawrence is just stood there. He doesn't know what's going on. And that's when people say that they're adolescent, that this is a clone this is a brand new clone. It hasn't had all of the information uploaded to it, kind of a rush job. Um, and they haven't downloaded everything to it. So it has a handler, and Will Smith was its handler, and with Kevin Hart, Dwayne Johnson's the handler, and we see this same pattern
Yes,
emerging. They're always with somebody else, like you said about Harry and Meghan. There's always somebody else there, kind of making sure that they don't trip up.
absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. And a person I knew well who was cloned, he had a handler too. And it wasn't, of course, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was someone external to us that came into our lives and kept coming in, and they were very new. And I was given that information. I suppose from my own intuitive abilities. I mean, it's not someone tells me in front of me. This is, it's my inner knowing, but my inner knowing and my intuitive abilities telling me that's his handler right there.
mm,
And yeah, it's just bizarre. And I mean, the clone I know is still alive. Has still got the image, uh, and is still running. It's bizarre, but it's a yeah. I mean, the things they have to do to clone someone as well. What I was going to say, Kate. You see, when they were trying, I got when she went missing for so long. I got that they were trying to clone her and they couldn't clone her. They were having trouble, and they kept trying to do it over and over again, and it kept failing until the point where they managed to get her cloned. But there was such a big delay because they just couldn't clone her. There was something going wrong every time they tried to clone her. They couldn't get her in the right image. If they released her too early, it would have been devastating. Even when she first came out, if you look, she looked 10, 15 years younger than
yes.
she looked, visibly looked different, didn't she? I think they perfected it. So
Well,
they
that
perfected
kind of there is a possibility, because do you remember Diana? Everybody said she'd had a nose job. Do you remember that? She had cosmetic surgery done. It was her nose. She had a nose
it.
job done. And I hadn't thought about it until you just mentioned Kate not being able to get it quite right. I wonder if Diana that was cloned, because
Oh,
she had this nose job and there was a big thing about her nose changing. Could that have been a nose job? Or could it have been that she was replaced and the nose was just slightly different? I don't know, but from what I understand, and and I've got to credit Donald Marshall really with this, because he was the person that started speaking about the cloning centres and what happened, and then started writing about it. Um, the cloning process itself is quite complex, and it's not immediate. So if you're in a position where you've got someone who's acting out and not following the script, not playing by the rules, and you need to get rid of them, then I suppose that then poses a problem, doesn't it? As opposed to having someone cloned in preparation for getting rid of them. If it's forced upon you, then that could explain why there's a delay in them reappearing or resurfacing. And I think with Kate, we all smelt a rat, didn't we? Because apparently no one, including her own family, went to visit her in Spain while she was in hospital. So I believe, yes, that she was replaced, and I've been saying that for a long time. But I often wonder if they've all been replaced. I mean, Putin's changed, hasn't he? Biden changed appearance half a dozen times. Trump
yeah.
doesn't look like the original Trump. Some of the actors out there, their eye color changes. Jim Carrey's another example. He's completely changed. Simon Cowell's changed. I know people will say they've had cosmetic work done. I understand that. But when you look at Simon Cowell today, with all of his money, he wouldn't have had cosmetic work done that would result in him actually looking disfigured.
Yes, it does. Yes. So
That I think is a glitch.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. I fully agree. And also clones, they have an energy where they look different in pictures. Like if you take a still picture of them, and you compare it to a picture of the real person 10 years before or 15 years before, you will see a distinct difference in even like the eyes. The eyes look dead in the photo of the clone. The eyes look dead. I'm going to have to give you the pictures that I've got of and show you, in private what I've got, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The eyes look dead.
mm,
Uh, and also they quite often they take on an energy of a little bit of darkness, like you take a family picture with a clone in, and the energy of the person in the picture is almost like they do look like shifty or a bit strange compared to the rest of the people. It's like
yeah.
it stands out a mile
Mm,
with true organic humans stood there with a non-organic like image of a human. It's almost like they stand out a mile. So it's interesting, but yeah, I mean, I think Anne was cloned. I think when she had that head injury and she went into hospital, I just had a funny feeling that she came out as if she'd not been cloned before, she'd be gone by then. Like to get
mm,
rid of her and take her out of the way, because she's sort of still close in that circuit. But who knows how many have been, yeah. Uh,
mm.
who knows what's going on with Sarah Ferguson? Has she run off because she's scared she is going to get cloned, or she's going to get, she's a patsy too? Who knows? I mean, is Andrew really human? Is he not? Like these things we've yet to find out, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah, we just don't know. But it's fascinating. Because one moment I'm talking about human cloning to people that are not fully on board, and the next minute the Epstein files are released and they're talking about what he was doing. And I've got a theory there with Zorro Ranch that if you had your own island and you were inviting the most powerful people in the world, and along with that, Oscar-winning actors, world famous singers and personalities, celebrities, mathematicians, and um, tech gurus like Peter Thiel or Musk or Gates, and you wanted to create a human being in your image that looked just like you, but shared traits, abilities, and skills of people that you admire in certain areas of the world, be it entertainment or business or politics, then you're in a position, aren't you, to capture their DNA? Because if you are providing them with kids to have sex with, and they're going to wear contraception, then what could you do with that condom
Yeah.
after they've used it? You could extract, without even their knowledge,
Yeah.
their DNA. And they had, scientists from Harvard and CRISPR working at Zorro Ranch on making little Jeffrey Epsteins. So I think he had a bit of a cocktail going on there where he was actually using himself as the main donor, if you like, and then taking elements that he admired in other people, putting that into the mix. And they were impregnating 20 girls a day as young as 14 years old at Zorro Ranch from about 2012. And they estimated that by 2020, there would have been, hundreds of people walking around right now, walking around that were a direct result of the cloning program that went on there in New Mexico. So, and once they had seized the property from him, the government went in. Some of the scientists stayed there and they carried on his research. So why are they doing that? And I think that what he was trying to do was show that he had the capability of repopulating the earth with the perfect, in their mind, person. And then they could get rid of us, poison us a bit more, give us some more medical interventions, ramp up the 5G mass, do all sorts of nefarious things to us, and slowly repopulate with these little Jeffrey Epstein 2.0s. And I think that was going on, and I think the governments couldn't be seen to be connected to it. If someone dug to the very, very roots of what was going on. So he was used. It was something that he was instructed to do because he was being bankrolled by BlackRock. A lot of the paper transactions had BlackRock on them, and he was also connected to. He had bought a lot of government bonds from Venezuela. He was connected to the Venezuelan government, and I wondered if the attack on Venezuela was linked to the fact that that was going to come out in the Epstein files.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
they could take control of that situation by removing the leader.
Mm.
Remove him before these files come out because Epstein is connected to the Venezuelan government financially. We need to take control before that blows up. So the timing I find quite strange. So Epstein appears to be involved in a lot of things, and I wonder if he was the kind of go-to guy, the fixer that the world leaders were using. And by world leaders, I don't just mean people like Trump and so on. I mean the people behind them too, the people that actually run things like Alexandra de Rothschild, Pepe Orsini. These people, you know, was he the person that they used? Because now, we're seeing him wandering around Israel with his bodyguards. So there's obviously incredible connections to him and all of these people with Israel. That people say that he was a Mossad agent, that Robert Maxwell was a Mossad agent, Rupert Murdoch, and so on. Now Beckham, he's decided he's Jewish, and he's associating himself with Israel. There's something going on there, and so yeah, going back to Epstein, I think he was doing the dirty work of other people, and that the one of the reasons for the island wasn't just because he was a sick and twisted individual, or still is, but because he was putting people into a position where he could not only blackmail them, having recorded what they were up to, but it gave him access to their DNA.
Mm. Yeah. It's all about DNA.
Mm,
Everything's about DNA. We started with DNA, and
mm.
there you go. It's all about DNA and wanting, uh, I believe, our DNA and what they want to do with our DNA. You know, uh, so they.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've explored that, and that's quite interesting because you've got Blackstone who own Ancestry.com, which is very unusual because that is not something they typically invest in. Most of their investments go into, into property and financial institutions, but more so bioweaponry. So you've got the largest database of DNA on on Earth, held by the largest investor in bioweapons in the world. Well, there's an easy two dots to join, isn't there? If you wanted to release toxins, vaccines, viruses, anything at all or put things into the food cycle, the food chain that target individual groups of people, then that would be the way to do it. And at the same time, you can give them a pretend family tree and say, look, did you know that you descend from Henry VIII, who never existed? Do you know what I mean? Did you know that? And then they'll say, great, I sent off my DNA and it looks like I've got royal blood in me. Isn't this fantastic? And of course, it's all fictitious, but it ticks a box. You've got your family tree and they've got your DNA. It's
You're
so
doing that.
clever.
And BlackRock and Blackstone, I do know or feel. I've bumped into people that have confirmed some of this. That is named after John Dee's scrying black
Mirror.
obsidian mirror. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The obsidian stone he had.
Yeah.
And
Blackstone.
so
Yeah.
it's all linked to the black magic and all of those lines, esoterical black magic, which they use to actually raise a clone. They can't do it without that. They have to use black magic to bring the clone into being. That's part of it, or they can't do it because it's an inversion of source and universal law. So they've got to use black magic, esoterical black magic, to be able to produce the clone. A ceremony has to be done for the clone to be produced. Especially when you're producing a clone of a human living being, they have to be either sacrificed or they've gone into a deep, shall I say, blood contract, yeah, for them to be able to have permission, if you see what I mean, permission for that to happen. That's my understanding
Yeah, I've not heard that before
yeah, no,
because it
yeah,
because my the sort of research I've done is more sort of scientific, I
yeah.
suppose.
I'm a bit more
But
esoteric. Yeah,
yeah, but I think they are too. So I think whether or not that actually has to be done might be secondary to the fact that if they believe it has to be done, they're
yeah,
doing it, aren't they? So it's a little bit like people say that, Trump and his friends are following prophecy, that they do believe that they are following prophecy, and that they worry about meeting their maker because of the karmic retribution for what they've done and not disclosed and how they've tricked and treated us. Um, but so it doesn't kind of matter whether or not we believe these things are real or exist. They seem to either that or they're using it. They either believe that this is totally true, or they're using it as a kind of justification to do some of the things that they do. But from my understanding, the leap between human cloning and IVF is not that far. You're not talking about a significant leap at all. And I had this conversation with Joe Telford yesterday, and he's got a huge following, and he's working to, Tartaria, cloning, and religion, really. And he tries to connect it all together. And he said to me that as far as he's concerned, everything in the Bible is based upon things that actually happened, and God is real, and Jesus did exist, and so on. But I often wonder if whether or not these parasites truly believe that, or if it's a vehicle that they can jump on for a ride. And they can say, well, and then they can show that all of the religious people out there that we are doing what we're supposed to. We are following.
yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's difficult to know, isn't it? But he said that if something's born as a clone, then it can't have a soul because it wasn't conceived in the right way. It wasn't as God intended. And I said, then that applies to IVF. Because if you can't naturally reproduce without science becoming involved or a laboratory process becoming part of it, then that is not God's intention. That is not what God designed us to do. So you are intervening in God's will, so to speak, if I follow your logic. And he said, yeah, yeah, I kind of get, yeah, that makes sense. So you can't really, you can't really distinguish the two, can you? If we are not created naturally the way God intended, whoever that is to you, um, then it doesn't matter whether you're created through IVF or by human cloning. Neither of them, were the natural way to do it. And I understand totally. I'm not saying I'm against IVF at all. Far from it. I think anything that can help someone who really wants a baby that desperately to have one is fantastic. My argument is, if you're saying that someone can't have a soul unless they were conceived naturally, there's a lot of children wandering around as a result of IVF, that therefore would fall into that category. So I don't believe it. I think everything living has a spark and a connection to something greater. And I don't think if there is this God that's loving and caring and benevolent, that they would say, because that poor child wasn't conceived through natural process, it was the result of IVF fertility treatment, or it was cloned in a laboratory, it can't come to heaven or have a connection with me because I don't like how it got here. That child had
Yeah.
You know, no role to play in that, did it? It couldn't stop it from happening. It now exists as a direct result of somebody else intervening in something, and and because of that, it can't go to heaven. Really, what sort of God would do that? I would imagine that it would welcome it with open arms and then condemn the people that created it.
Yeah, I get you. I get you. I understand what you're saying.
Just my two pennyworth there. I just think
Oh, sorry.
you
Yeah,
can't.
we've been
Sorry.
go on.
No, I was
No,
just going to say, I just think it would be a very cruel thing indeed to say that a clone can't go to heaven or can't have a connection or can't have a soul um, because of it wasn't naturally conceived, without considering at the same time that there are, you know, thousands of people wandering around right now that are here because, you know, because of IVF. So I just find that a very, very strange thing to say, um, you know, because of the implications.
yeah, there's probably in my understanding, and this is my opinion. My understanding is that there's a definitive difference between the clone and IVF. To my because cloning, in my opinion, of my experience, it's always created for nefarious
Oh
purposes.
yes, but I'm just
You
saying
know,
the actual
IVF
person.
is
It's
different. You know,
yeah.
IVF
No, I'm
is
saying
different.
the actual individual itself.
Yeah,
So it doesn't matter why that individual was created. That wasn't the fault of the individual, was my argument. So
I,
that clone might exist because somebody somewhere did, you know, made it for all the wrong reasons.
yeah.
So do we punish the clone because of that?
It depends on how you define a clone, whether you define a clone that has a consciousness of another person. So if that consciousness was loaded in from a true sort of original biological soul as such, and the consciousness has been pulled into that clone, yeah, then that original soul is the owner of that consciousness. Therefore,
Hmm.
that original soul has a right over that consciousness. So that clone that has been created with the consciousness of a soul that may be dead already, then what do you do with that? Because actually,
Yeah.
there's no heart in them. They have no hearts. So clones, proper clones, the ones I've seen, they have no hearts. They have no God spark. So their consciousness is coming in via that chip in the back of their head.
Yes.
You know what
Uploaded.
I'm saying?
Hmm.
So there's a
Yeah.
bit of a difference in that. But who knows how many types of clones there are in the world
Four.
right now? Well, there you go. So we could
Yeah.
go on and on. I mean, we've been going an hour and a half
Oh,
nearly.
crikey. Okay, well, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, no, we could go on. Well, you'll have to come on again, won't you? You come on again and we'll talk more because it's so fascinating to unravel this. Because I love it
Well,
because
you'll
you're
have to
full of
come on
the
mine. You
information.
come on
Yeah,
mine next because
I
I'd
will.
like you to share your you know, what
Yeah,
you've as much as you're comfortable.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
obviously, I'm sure you don't want, you know, to go into much detail about your own experiences, but whatever you're comfortable with sharing, then I'd love to have you come on mine.
Healed. I'm healed now, and I use my experiences to assist others. So, I'm pulling all of those experiences I had into something positive and
Hmm.
into action, and
Yeah.
to, so that's what keeps me going and
Hmm.
inspires me. But it's been great talking to you. Yeah, we've been going quite a while. And I was trying to, what it's like if you put it on for too long, people go, oh, I'll have to,
Yeah, they don't watch the
and come
end.
back. But
Yeah, I've had that a few times with mine on YouTube. They said, "Oh, I started watching this, so I'll watch the rest later." I think, oh, if you're anything like me, you probably won't. But
it's been
yeah, Richard Vobe said to me, after an hour, most people switch off.
it's been fascinating talking to you. I love talking to
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, and to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it.
Um, and we'll talk again soon. And I hope to see you on a circuit this year. I don't know if you're back at the Shine in August or not, but
I don't intend to be.
all right, okay. But I might see you around because I'm moving to Somerset when I get back from Egypt,
Oh,
and
wow.
I will be doing lots of talks and things. So I may see you. Hopefully, I will.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Hopefully,
you're not a million miles away from me. I'm just near Exeter, so not
yeah,
far at all.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, until we talk again.
Thank you.
I've had you on, and everybody, I'll put the links for your books and your website and your Facebook page to follow you. And I'm sure most people watching this will know who you are already, but I'll put all the links down for
Thank
you.
you. That's really kind of you. Thank you,
All right.
Lynn.
Okay, so lots of love. Take
Yeah,
care.
love to you too. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.